This is After Hours with me, Jimmy Thistle. Welcome back, guys. And today we've got Emily Chadbourne. Emily and I have been following each other since I think, way back, maybe in the first couple of months, maybe the first year of my sobriety, my recovery. And she was a great support right at the beginning, because she's a couple of years ahead of me in the journey. So it was just lovely to have Emily on and to have a chat with her. Alcohol wasn't a huge part of, Emily's family growing up. It was only just really kind of reserved for maybe special occasions. She does talk about, a picture of her at quite a young age, with a glass of sherry. But as I say, it wasn't a huge part of her growing up, but it did her family's kind of strong moral kind of uh, thoughts on life and all that had this really strong kind of moral fiber. Helped her in a lot of kind of maybe possibly getting into vulnerable positions with her drinking as she went through her teen years, because she started at 14. But which of us didn't really go through that kind of mid 90s kind of drinking, the bus shelter or the park with school friends, or saying you're going to one friend's house and then going to another's, and telling your parents little porkies and things like that. So it's her drinking wasn't really kind of different from most people's, but at uni it kind of I suppose ramped up a bit. She met an amazing bunch of people that became her good friends even till today. So she hit the jackpot with that. But as she said, our uni was kind of not easy for her, but she never had she could have studied harder and come out with a first, but she says she got a drinking degree of a 2-1. But she moved to Australia when she was 30, ended up in the middle of nowhere with really nothing to do with her boyfriend at the time. He was working up there, and as she said, her qualification, kind of experience in hospitality didn't really kind of make any difference up there. They weren't interested in that. So she ended up waiting tables for $20 an hour. Her drinking just kind of ramped up and got worse and worse. And as she said, kind of almost was the beginnings of a really slow mental breakdown, feeling lonely, not herself, and just extremely isolated. But Emily then kind of went on to be back into the kind of party scene, living in a city, and just kind of, yeah, I suppose the drinking had got a hold of her at that point. So, as we talk about later on, well, Emily talks about later on in the episode, listen for the similarities and not the differences, guys. See you at the end. Emily, welcome to After Hours. It's so great to finally speak to you, because as we were talking earlier, we've been following each other since December 2021, which is eons ago.
Lifetimes ago.
So yeah, yeah. So it's great to finally kind of. I know we've chatted on Messenger and commenting in each other's posts and things like that over the years. So it's just lovely to finally kind of meet you and have a chat with you. So whereabouts in the world are you, Emily?
So I'm in Melbourne, Australia at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's been here for 15, almost 15 years now. So it's
Wow.
definitely home. Well, no, I just have two homes.
You have two
England
homes.
is still
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, because your accent. Whereabouts in England are you from?
The southwest. Yeah, I grew up
Southwest.
near Glastonbury.
Nice, nice. Have you been to the
Yeah.
festival?
I did back in the day
Back in the
when
day.
there weren't fences and you could kind
Yeah,
of just
yeah.
sneak in through the back field.
You didn't get a ticket.
No, you didn't really
No.
have to in
But you were
1997.
you were local, and I bet you felt like, well, it's in our doorstep, so
Marched
we
on in.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So what's the weather like in whereabouts in Australia are you? Did you say?
So Melbourne, so very
Melbourne,
far
yeah.
south.
Yeah,
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 it
yeah.
should be delightful because we are
Hmm.
definitely careering into summer season. But
Yeah,
for whatever reason, this weekend, Melbourne was like, here's that last taste of winter for you. So
yeah.
yeah, currently got the heater on, as you can see there.
Well, we've got, I mean, obviously we're in bang into autumn now, and you can see, I mean, hat is on. It's not because it's cold in the house, it's because, I've not done my hair this morning. But yeah, apologies on that. Emily, tell us a little bit about your kind of childhood when you're growing up and when you had your first drink.
Oh my God. I had my first drink. There's a really famous photograph in
Mm.
the Chadbourne photo albums. It's going to paint my parents in a terrible light. So I'm going to tell you the story and then I'm going to try and bring my parents back to some kind of credibility.
Of
And there's a
course.
very famous picture in the photo album of me at about the age of 5. And
Uh-huh.
I'm sitting on a little wicker chair, tiny little wicker chair, and it's Christmas time, and I'm watching the snowman on the telly,
Hmm.
and I'm holding a little uh, cut glass full of sherry.
Oh my God.
And that sounds terrible. It sounds like child abuse, but it was just the tiniest little sip. I used to love it from
Yeah.
a very young age, and my parents would let me have tiny, tiny, tiny little taste on very
Yeah.
special occasions. And my parents weren't big drinkers. My parents, we would have a sherry on a Sunday before a roast dinner,
Hmm.
very classically English.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, and then, gin and tonic at Christmas or something. But
Yeah.
my parents were not big drinkers. Alcohol, that makes it sound like alcohol was a huge part of our lives. And it really wasn't growing up. My dad didn't go to the pub. That wasn't sort of part of how he socialized.
Hmm.
I never really, outside of those very special occasions, I
Yeah.
didn't really see my parents drink, and
It's
and I had
almost like they're and I'm I don't think there is a right way of doing it, but in the kind of on paper that sounds like they're doing it right. They're only doing it at special occasions, and I bet on those special occasions they weren't going hell for leather. They weren't having like
no,
20
no,
gin and tonics. It would be like two or three for the
yeah,
flavor. Let's get little Emily a tiny little thimble
and I
full
was
of
always allowed a
sherry.
taste,
Yeah, yeah.
and
You just probably, it was probably the taste, but also you felt very sophisticated, I'm sure, as little 5-year-old Emily drinking with the older ones,
yes,
which
and
is a lot of.
included. My sisters were, well, my sisters are older than me,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so I was always desperate to grow up. I
Yeah,
always desperate, 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 desperate to do whatever the adults were doing and whatever the grown-ups were doing.
of
And I was
course.
the youngest of my entire family as well. So
Like
I
cousins
think
and all of that, and yeah, yeah.
absolutely, but by such an amount that I could never really play with them. I was never really
Right.
included in their games. So yeah, I was desperate to grow up from the moment I was born.
Yeah,
So I don't
yeah.
know if that played into it, but yeah, I think I grew up with a very healthy example of enjoying alcohol, consuming alcohol, but not letting it dictate what
Hmm.
fun meant, it not being at the center of socialization, it being something that should be sort of revered and appreciated.
Yeah.
Um, so it was, yeah, I have sat in many, many, many recovery rooms and I've heard
Hmm.
so many stories and I've always thought to myself, it doesn't make sense for me.
Hmm.
And what I have learnt is that nothing makes sense, and the more sense you try and make of it, the less sense it makes. And sometimes you should just come face to face with the truth and accept it. Like that's just it. Not everything needs a reason,
No,
always, all the time.
I mean for me, and I've spoken about this. It's like I didn't have any major trauma growing up. That like my parents split up when I was 6, but it wasn't, I mean they had fights and stuff, but it wasn't like this whole, War of the Roses type thing. It was just a breakup. Marriages did dissolve in the 80s, and that's what happened. My brother and me we never went without. My mum worked really hard to kind of provide, but when I got the taste of alcohol, I loved it.
So
And let's be honest, it is a drug. So the more you do of a drug, the more chance you are of getting addicted to it. And that's like I'm the same as you. I've searched and gone, why did I end up like this and not my friends that I was drinking with and all that? And it's like, well, I just did it a lot more, I think, and I enjoyed it a lot more. So yeah.
Yeah.
So when did did you start drinking at kind of 14 like everyone else on the podcast, or did
Yeah,
you?
it's I grew up a very classic 1990s teenage years. I went to
Yeah,
school in 1992. I finished secondary school in 1997. I lived in the country.
yeah,
So the way that we socialized was your mum dropped you off at your friend's house and you promised her that that's where you would stay all night. And then you
yeah,
managed to convince some 18-year-old boys to go out and buy you 2 liters of cider and you go to the park and you drink it. And that is
yeah,
basically what we did from the age of 14 until we could start driving, and then we got the hell out of there.
yeah,
But it was never, it didn't feel problematic because that's just how everyone was doing it. And I don't think it was problematic. I think it was coming of age. I think it
it
was
was.
experimenting and trying and pushing the boundaries and risking. My parents brought me up with a very clear and boundaried moral compass,
Mm-hmm.
and that pulled me out of situations that I could very easily have found myself in on more than one occasion. Even now at the age of 44, I sometimes make decisions based on my parents' approval, which is a blessing and a curse. But it really
Yeah,
did in my teenage years. It really kept me safe, actually,
yeah, yeah.
in moments when I could have put myself in very precarious situations. But it was, 2020 Mad Dog and
Oh,
Borough Hill cider, which was the local cider, Scrumpy Jack. It was all that.
Mary
How
Down,
much can you drink?
bit of Mary Down, bit of White Lightning, and all these
White
different ones.
Lightning and a
White Lightning.
packet of Lambert and Butler. Oh, those were the days.
Well, you could
Living it
get 10.
large.
You could get 10 Lambert and Butlers for
10.
probably
No,
pennies.
from the Texaco garage up the road, you could
Yeah.
buy 10 for £1.11 and 20 for £2.22, and they didn't even care if you were wearing your school uniform. So it was a different time.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I mean,
was
I'm the same age. Well, I'm 45, Emily. So like definitely the same era. And the 90s, I've always said they've got a lot to answer for. But I had a great time. That was what we did. We had Oasis, we had Blur, we had
yeah.
Elastica, and all these other girl bands that weren't like the Spice Girls. They were rocking out, and they were on stage and drinking. It was that whole rock and roll thing. It was like
Yeah.
we wanted the 60s back, and we
Yeah.
were damned if we weren't going to do it properly this time, and that's kind of like everything on TV, Sarah Cox, I think, what was it, the Girly Show, and they were all
Yes.
definitely half cut on there. There was The
Oh,
Words, there was all
100%.
these other shows,
Yeah. Off their
and
tits.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I remember, yeah, all the bands that came on The Word. I'm pretty sure they were all kind of drinking like around the table with Mark Lamar and can't remember the
Yeah.
other presenters' names, but that's what we were
It was
watching when we'd maybe come in from the not the pub, but come in from being at a friend's house or whatever, or if we were staying over, we'd be watching that late at night. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
was.
and it was ladette culture, right?
Yeah,
Like, be one of the lads. How many
yeah,
lagers can you down? It was very much that type of culture, and I didn't have any other reference point. I just went with it.
yeah.
I had a great time. It was fab. And then I went to university
Hmm.
and did what all good university students should do, and I got trashed for 4 years. And it really was socializing was about going out, going clubbing, going back to someone's house, staying up until the sun came up,
Yeah,
lurching into your part-time job that then paid for you to go back out the next night. I mean, I look back now, and I do know how I did it, alcohol and drugs, but it was insane. The energy that you have when you're in your early 20s, if only I had directed that in a different way. But I had a really good time doing it. And again, it didn't feel problematic. Everyone around me was doing it. It was the
yeah,
culture, it was how we socialized, it was how we have fun. And that,
yeah.
I think, is probably when I first started to associate myself as party girl is the wrong terminology, but I've not been able to find the right words for it ever, really. But just really my identity, how I showed up in social situations. I guess there's a reliance. That's
Hmm.
when the reliance sort of began. The idea
Yeah,
that, I would stand in a social situation, meet new people, dance. I've got like the rhythm of a very, very old, decrepit gnat. Like I do not own rhythm. So
Yeah.
for me to get on a dance floor and move my body, I must be drunk. There's no possible way I would do that
Yeah,
sober.
but I bet you can dance when you're drunk. No? Yeah? Or is it just kind of
I am basically Michael Flatley when I'm drunk.
right? But
I
in your
am
head,
the queen of the dance floor.
yeah,
But that it all became it became the lifeline, or but it came the thing that kept me.
yeah.
I guess it
Well,
was just it was a security blanket.
we start off at university with Freshers Week, which yeah is meant to be about introducing kids to clubs and different political kind of I don't know ideologies and things like that because there's all these different groups that advertise themselves in Freshers Week. But let's be honest, Freshers Week is not about that. Freshers Week is about going and getting 2 for 1 pints and a pound a pint and shots for 50p and all that kind of stuff. Back then it's crazy because a lot of these, how old were you when you went to uni? What, 18,
I
19?
was 18.
Yeah, so you've just left home, probably can only boil. I mean, I'm not saying whether you can cook or not, but most kids can't
I still
really
can't
even
cook.
boil pasta, right? So, but then
Yeah.
they're introduced into this. This is what we do. This is how you live your life, and it's like, well, it's a university. You're gonna sow your wild oats at uni, and then you're gonna get on into the real world. So it's like I must do this now. But let's be honest, a lot of people don't come out of that
No.
because and then moderate. I still know people in their 40s and 50s are still going mad for it at the weekends. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you still do that? Because like you're saying, the energy that we had, like I mean, I didn't go to uni till later. I was doing college, but like a Friday night or even a Thursday night, that would be it all the way around to Sunday.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
be working in between that as well, like maybe during the day at like my music video shop that I worked. And everyone else would be in the same boat because we'd probably all been out the night before together. We're like serving people, and then as soon as you finish that, it's like right out again. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I had whole shifts at work that I didn't remember. Sort of stumbled in, hoping that you were there at the right time, stumble out again on the other side of it, and then go straight back to the pub.
yeah.
It's just, it was,
And
yeah.
I
I mean,
like
but it was good times. Again, I have such fond memories, and I met friends who, to this day, I still see. We all go on holiday once a year together, me and the
yeah,
uni crew. Whenever I'm back, I go back to the UK every year, and we always make a point of getting together and going on holidays. There's so many children involved now, so it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. But it's I look back on that time with such fondness and no regret. It still didn't feel any different to what anybody else was doing,
yeah,
and it still felt very recreational.
yeah.
And I think it felt recreational until I tell you what it was. I began working for myself.
What did you do at uni? Let's what?
Oh, I
Yeah,
did. Well, actually, this is quite good fun. So,
yeah.
I started off by doing a 4-year degree in primary teacher training, majoring in
Okay.
drama. So, I was
Yeah,
going to be a
yeah,
primary school teacher, and I did that. And I was in a long-term relationship.
yeah.
So, for my first year of university, I was in this long-term relationship, and we broke up kind of at the halfway through the first semester of the second year.
Okay. So right in the thick of it.
And
Yeah.
that's when I was like, I am living with a bunch of people. All my friends were doing like media studies,
Mm,
and they had like 6 hours of lectures a week, and that was it. And I was doing 25 hours of lectures a week and working in a primary school.
yeah.
And I looked around and I was like, this is bullshit. What am I doing? I don't want to do this. And so
Yeah.
I walked into my tutor's office and I was like, how do I get out of this? I don't want to
Yeah.
do this anymore, but I want to stay at university. Like, I don't want to give this up. I don't want to give the lifestyle up. I just don't want to do this. And so we negotiated that I would leave but stay a student and then pick up in the September of that year into
Uh-huh.
the second year of a BA.
Right.
Yeah. So I then had a semester and a half of no lectures, but was still officially a student, so got my student loan.
Yeah.
So that was obviously like, what, 4 months of just utter debauchery.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Because you're not even working. You're not even working in the school or anything. And then were
no,
you going
I
to
was
go and
doing
do
nothing. I had
media
no
as well?
lectures, nothing. I picked up some extra shifts at the restaurant I was working, so I
Yeah.
had some more money so I could go and spend more
Some
money
beer
on
tokens and yeah,
booze and
going out money.
CDs, basically.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And did
Yeah.
you then go into media? Was that what you?
No, so then I did my official BA is education and drama,
Right,
which
right.
I have obviously never used because
Well,
what does one do with a BA honours in education and drama? I think I
well, I
convinced.
think on your Instagram, Emily, sorry to butt in, you do educate us in a dramatic way. So
Thank you so much.
I think you're
That has been
using it.
reflected back to me.
It's well
Yes,
worth
I'm
the
not
money.
sure the University of Winchester quite had that in mind as
No.
they were putting me through their education process, but yeah, I just had a lot of fun. I think my priority was how much fun can I have, and
Yeah.
everything exists with its polarity intact, right?
Hmm.
You have to have two sides of the same coin all of the time. You can't have heads and heads, you can't have tails and tails. You must have heads and tails.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so fun is like at the top of my values list.
Right. Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
time I have done any personality testing or any values assessment or any of those sorts of things, it has always come out that fun is at the very top of my priority
Hmm.
list.
Hmm.
And the the positive of that is that I have a really fun life and I'm really fun to be around and I have quite high energy.
Hmm.
And the not so positive of that, the sort of shadow side of that is that if something's not fun, I'm probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
And it can be very unresourceful in the wrong circumstances,
Sure.
under the wrong conditions. So I didn't know that about myself when I was 22.
Hmm.
And so, all like, yeah, my decisions were very much based on how much fun can I have in this situation? Is this
Yeah.
going to be fun for me?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that is, yeah. I mean, I love all that, and you obviously are, a very fun person, and that at university is what that's about, and it's not a case of right. I mean, I'm sure there are people that I know there are people that get their head down and they do that, but there are people that can go out and have fun and still pass. Obviously, you passed your BA. Did you get into any kind of like trouble with money or anything like that at university, or were you still quite sensible and you thought, right,
No,
this is what I've got budget wise to go out with this weekend, or did it kind of affect you in that way at all?
this is where the moral compass from my parents
Yeah,
came in.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of have always had this sort of invisible line that I know I will never cross
Hmm.
as a result of my parents.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that has, like I've said before, kept me out of trouble on more than one occasion. And so, whilst I never had loads of I was always in an overdraft. Everyone's in an overdraft. And of
Of
course,
course, yeah.
I went to university in the year 2000
Hmm.
and they had just introduced student loans.
Ah, yeah.
So, I think I paid that off last year or something.
Wow, yeah,
So,
yeah.
that felt like free money, and I probably didn't have a great handle on that. But
Hmm.
I worked.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I always had a part-time job while I was at uni, and I have always, I've always been a bit of a blagger.
Hmm.
So I sailed through uni. I
Hmm.
absolutely could have and probably should have walked out with a first.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, I sailed through into a 2-1.
Yeah,
It didn't even break a sweat.
yeah. But if you
So
tried that little bit harder and done that, you would have done that. Yeah.
with a
And I
bit more
think,
focus, with a bit more understanding of what maybe I wanted to create. I think it's so different now to have this conversation with a 20-year-old. My niece is 21,
hmm,
and here, I think because of social media, again, there's a dark side and a light side to social media. And I think
Of
one of the
course.
great things about social media is that it has given people an understanding of possibility and
Hmm.
a feeling of hope that maybe back in the early noughties we just didn't have so much. We
Hmm.
couldn't, you can't do what you can't see.
Yeah.
And I just don't think I understood my privilege. I don't think I understood my potential.
Hmm.
And I really don't think I understood how many opportunities there were for my taking. And so I didn't see them, so I couldn't take them. And so I didn't make decisions on that. Does that make sense? I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like, what is
absolutely.
the next thing I'm doing? What is the next thing I'm doing? Sort of lurching from whatever it was right in front of my face. And often what was
Yeah.
right in front of my face was a
Just
good
letting it
time.
happen, just letting it happen,
Letting it
not really,
happen.
not pushing yourself to, like I,
No
I lost a
intention.
bit of ambition and kind of was just like, because all these things, after I left college, I got a really good job and it happened, it happened, it happened. And then, I was living in a great apartment with some really good mates. And I was just like, and I took my foot off the pedal because I thought
Mm,
life is great. And I was like, taking drugs, drinking. And I just thought, and then that's when things started to go downhill because I
yeah.
wasn't pushing myself anymore, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I didn't have a focus. I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
no
yeah,
intention. I
yeah.
really didn't have any ambition. And
Hmm.
because I had always had it quite easy, like sailed through school, had lovely parents, had great sisters, had quite nice friends, especially when I got to university. Like I hit the jackpot of friendships when
Hmm.
I hit
Hmm.
university. And that really set a high standard and a high bar for me for friendships in my life. And I consider myself to be exceptionally blessed by the friendships that I have.
Hmm.
And they're very important to me. But I think there is, again, a dark side to having things so easy. You
Yeah,
you become less appreciative. You maybe
yeah,
become a bit more wasteful. Um, and so I think I just assumed that everything would always work out for me because everything always had worked out for me.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
wonder if I had had a parent, a mentor, a hardship, or something, or some kind of conversation where someone had sat me down and gone, "You have got potential, lady. What are you going to
Mm.
do with it? Like, what do you really want from your life?" And I think because I was just always having quite a nice time, I never asked myself that question. And so I didn't get or I didn't give myself the opportunity to map out a pathway between where I was and where I wanted to be because I never worried about where I was going because everything was kind of always working out for me.
Absolutely.
And so I
And I
didn't
think,
really cultivate ambition.
yeah, and that's the weird thing. It's like, because when you go to school, you do well at school, and they always tell you, you do well at school, then you can go to university or college, and then you get a good job and all that. And then it's like, once you leave the university or college and you get that good job, it's like, right, now what?
Yeah.
This is like, what am I? Nobody really tells you, right? You don't need to stay in that one position or whatever. You can kind of get promotions or whatever. But for me, it was like I wanted to do photography, and I was then working in photography. But it was like I gave up on doing my own kind of artsy side of it. I was just doing it as a job in product photography. So although I thought, right, I've made it, like I wasn't doing what I could have been doing, and it wasn't like, right, this job's going to be my job forever. And I know probably didn't think that, but it was like, for now it's like, look at me, I've got my own studio, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm making good money. So I just kind of like plateaued, I guess. Yeah, because no one really says keep going, do more.
That's a really great word for it, is
Yeah,
you sort of plateau. I think I peaked really early and then was just like, oh, like now what?
yeah. And it was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's my working week, and I loved that. And then it was like, but I'm invested in these weekends because these weekends are where I'm meeting amazing people. I'm having a good time, and that's what I was living for. That week, that what was the song? Living for the weekend, Hard
Mm.
Fire or something like that, back in the
Yeah.
90s. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well,
So when did it? Yeah, when did
I
it kind of turn
left
for you
uni, went
then?
into hospo. So um, I was working, whilst I was at uni, I was working for a really large chain high street restaurant.
Hmm.
And I've always been quite efficient. I'm quite an efficient person.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm also quite bossy. And so I by the time I was writing my dissertation in my final year, I was also like assistant manager of this
Yeah.
restaurant that I was
Yeah.
working at part time. Like I was just a doer. I just get shit done.
Yeah.
And I went, I worked for them for a year full time after my degree. And then I went off traveling, had a really great time, went through Asia, Australia, lived in Wellington and New Zealand for a bit,
Nice.
came back. And I came back with the idea in the very back of my brain that maybe I would go on to do an MA because I was sort of quite vaguely maybe interested in using drama in some kind of therapeutical kind of way. Like, wasn't quite sure what that looked like, but I was like, surely there's an MA somewhere where I can sort of use drama as therapy for people. And then I came back and I was broke, obviously, because I've been living the high life around
Of
Asia
course.
and
Yeah.
New
Traveling.
Zealand. And so my boss called, my old boss called, and he was like, "Look, I've got a restaurant. Do you want to go and manage it for a bit? You can get yourself back on your feet, get yourself some cash back in your bank." And so I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that for a bit." And then again, because I didn't have any plan or intention or focus or ambition, and they kept paying me more money, and then they promoted me, and then I got headhunted to a different chain, and then I got headhunted again into a different chain that was just starting, and that felt really exciting. And then I moved to London to do that job, and then at one point I was taking a burger van around to all of these festivals to sell burgers at festivals. Like it was just, there was no plan,
Yeah.
and I was being paid quite well, and I was just in hospo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So although I was in operations, it was still like everything revolves around booze, and
Yeah.
it just is part of the culture.
And it's a
I was
very
living in London in
social.
my 20s. I
Yeah,
was
it's a very
working
social
hard, I
job.
was earning money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I worked in bars and restaurants, and like you, I worked up to like assistant manager. I was manager at one point, but it was although it's antisocial because you're working weekends and evenings. The people you work with, you tend to socialize with. It's not
Yeah.
like just an office job where you go and see them 9 to 5, Monday, Friday, and then you don't see them. With bar and restaurant, I don't know about you, but I was out with them constantly. They were like my family
Yeah.
because we'd all have
Life
like
got
maybe a
better.
Tuesday night off, and we'd all go out and get absolutely leathered. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I ended up living my 20s. Again, nothing felt problematic. I do remember once coming home from work, and my flatmate Laura was standing in the kitchen, and it was like a Wednesday night or whatever. And because you work hospo, there's no there's no parameter around, like it's a school night. There's none of that
No, 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 because
at
you,
all.
you you work on a Friday and
Just
Saturday
work
night,
whenever you
so
work, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I remember coming home and I had a bottle of Oyster Bay Sauv Blanc, which I used to
Nice.
love. I loved the shit out of that stuff. And
Yeah.
I came home and I opened the bottle of wine, and I said to Laura, do you want a glass? And she was like, no, it's like a Wednesday night. And I was like, huh, that's weird. And
Where did
I
she
can
work? Sorry, what did she work in?
she worked 9 to 5 in a normal
Yeah.
office,
So it was a school night. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It was a school night.
yeah,
And I remember that I can look back on that freeze frame of time and think, oh yeah, that was it. It was just a different way of thinking about it
yeah,
that
yeah,
felt really foreign to me. I
yeah,
didn't have that same, it's a school night. I don't think I ever had that. There was never any container around when it was appropriate to drink and when it was not appropriate to drink. That never came. That was just not the way I lived my life.
yeah,
And I think I also noticed how, like, I was probably always the last one to go to bed and always the first one to be like, that sounds fun, let's do that. And,
yeah.
that, I think I probably carved sort of a slight identity around that as well. It felt significant or fun, or the one who would always
You were
just
the
say yes.
you're the wild one, and it's funny you say
Yeah.
that about that parameters about drinking times, and I think there was one time at college because up in Aberdeen, I was at college up there, and there was one time we knew there was these bars that were open for the fishermen and the people coming in from the rigs in the docks down at the harbour that were open. There was the Schooner and the Criterion, and they were both open from about 6 a.m. So we all were like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we go down there and get a couple of pints, before college or something like this? And I think we only did it once or twice, and we were sat in there watching the Big Breakfast,
Oh
with all
yeah.
these other booze hounds, like, and I'm pretty sure there was some female dancers over at this side of the room and the Big Breakfast on the TV. So it was just this weird, seedy little bar, and we were in there. So that completely was, became the norm. So if we were at a party and it was like, if you're hanging or coming down or whatever, to then drink in the morning was never, like, I'm not saying I did that all the time, but like you, there was, I would never go, oh my God, you cannot drink at this time in the morning. So it was always, so later on in my drinking career, when it became a problem, majorly, drinking in the morning was never an issue. Do you know what I mean? Because I
It's
needed it.
socially
But yeah,
acceptable.
socially acceptable for me, and it was, yeah. So I totally hear what you're saying. I'm not saying that you were drinking in the mornings, but it just
Not
doesn't
then.
matter. Well, not then, but no, it doesn't. There are people that go, well, I can't do that at that time.
Yes.
Because it's a school night, or it's before 12 o'clock, or before 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's just out, and they make these rules and boundaries where I never had those.
No. No, no, no. My lifestyle never supported those
No,
boundaries.
no, no, not at all.
So then I met a guy and moved to Australia. He was from Melbourne. And we actually moved. He had some work opportunities up in
And what
Airlie
age are you
Beach.
at this point? Sorry, Emily.
I just turned 30.
Right. Okay. So time
Yeah.
to settle down and get.
Candid man, gonna move to Australia for a bit. Let's just see
Yeah.
how it goes.
See how it goes.
I
Yeah.
knew I needed something different. I
Yeah.
think I was beginning to see lots of my friends starting to get engaged, settle down, move out of London back to their home counties because they were planning families.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people had kind of left whatever version of hospo or post uni job. People were getting promoted, they were earning really good money. I was beginning to feel a little bit left behind.
Yeah.
So when the opportunity came to move to Australia, I was like, that'll fix it.
Yeah. Because that's
So
completely different from what they're doing. So you're just like, you guys are going to crack on doing that. You're going to get settled down and all that. I'm going to be absolutely off the chart, crazy, go to Australia.
I'm
Yeah.
going to do something crazy and
Why
fun.
not? Yeah. 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 Definitely.
So we moved to Airlie Beach. So Airlie Beach is the gateway to the Whitsundays, which sounds so beautiful and romantic. It's the
Hmm.
very north, not the very north, very north of the country, so quite close to the equator. Very hot
Right.
all the time. And in the summer seasons, it's not summer, we don't really call it summer, it's the wet season. Like it's just damp, it's just so
Oh,
humid.
really?
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And this tiny little town, they've actually really developed it over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. But when I was there, it was I had like two pubs, two restaurants, the marina where all the boats went out to the reef. Two clubs, was very backpackery, very transit, was tiny, in the
Hmm. Hmm.
middle of fucking nowhere. If you've never been to Australia, it is impossible to explain the vastness of the
Hmm.
country, the remoteness of some of these smaller towns, and also just how completely out of the rest of the world you feel. You know,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been living in London and part of Europe, and Paris is on, like, I could, like, literally within 20 minutes of my front door be at the station where I could get on a train and be in Paris an hour later.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
now I'm just sort of floating on this island, this massive, massive, massive fucking island, not close to anything. Nothing is happening. It
Yeah.
is absolutely a
And this
decade behind the rest of the rest of the world, and I'm
this
in this
little town.
tiny town,
Are we talking
tiny.
like, are we talking days from other places, or like
So
many, many hours drive to
the
like,
nearest cinema was like 2 hours away if the roads weren't
wow.
flooded.
Right, okay,
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's like
everything
driving
closes
from
at eight
Manchester
o'clock.
to London almost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everything closes at 8 p.m. And
Wow.
my people went there. There was just no people there. And I
Hmm.
had gone from being quite well known in my industry. I've been all of the jobs that I had, the different places I'd worked in, I'd got that job because I'd been headhunted. I'd been
Hmm. Hmm.
approached by another company and gone, we want you to come and start this project. We want you to come and start this chain. We want you to do this ridiculous burger festival thing. Like, it had all been very playing into my significance needs.
Sure.
And now I'm in Australia in the middle of fucking nowhere, surrounded by boats, which I don't really like, and backpackers, which I also don't really like.
Yeah.
And my family aren't around me, my friends aren't around me, I don't know anybody apart from my boyfriend. And it's so fucking hot, I can barely breathe. And I, nobody cares. Nobody cares about where I've worked. They don't care about my qualifications. They don't care. None of it's relevant. Health and safety is not relevant. Food safety is not relevant. It's such a different landscape, the hospitality landscape in Australia
Yeah.
to the UK. So I may as well have been like a 5-year-old. That was
Yeah.
where my skill set was at. And I had
Hmm.
this bloody degree, drama and education, that I'd never done anything with. And so I ended up waiting tables for $20 an hour.
Wow. And what was he doing? So why had you gone to this little tiny
He'd had
village?
some opportunity up there to do,
Oh,
interestingly enough, some photography stuff.
right,
So
right,
we
right.
spent a year there, and in that year, I think it's amazing what you can see with hindsight.
Hmm.
In that year, what started was a very slow mental breakdown,
Right.
a corrosion of my self-worth,
Hmm.
and an inability to piece together the person that I had been in London and the person that I now found myself being
Yeah.
in Australia. And I began drinking. It was the only thing that I knew to do
Yeah.
to feel better. So I drank
Yeah.
every night, every night, every night, every night. And I was so aware of what other people, what my boyfriend, he would make comments like, "Are you going to have another glass of wine? You've just basically polished off a bottle." And then and that would stop me because I'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that is because somebody else is basically monitoring me
Called you out on it. Yeah.
and called me out on it so I can kind of contain it." Even though I'm sort of sitting like feeling a bit like, oh, actually, I could really do with another. But no, you're right, I shouldn't. Like, I don't want you to think I've got a problem because then I'm going to have to stop.
Yeah. Now, was
So
it
I,
like, because I'm imagining this little, you know, outback kind of tavern type place like in Crocodile Dundee or something where all the old, you know, guys and Sheilas are drinking like, you know, and they're all having this laugh light in Crocodile Dundee. But were you drinking at home or was, because it sounds
I was
like there's
drinking
probably a lot
at
of
home.
drinking in that town as well because there's not really
There was
much
a
else
lot of
to do.
backpackers, and it was
Yeah.
not my scene.
Right. So you just stayed out of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was
Drinking at
drinking at
home.
home. I felt
Yeah.
very isolated. I felt very lonely, and I felt very not myself.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, as you said, like everything that you've like built yourself up in your hospitality career, you know, and all that, like they don't give two monkeys about that of what you've learned or whatever. And like if you're saying, oh, you're trying to have a conversation with someone down the town or whatever, oh, I've come from London, they're like, don't care, mate. Don't care. Sorry
No,
about
no
my
give a
accent,
fuck.
but yeah. So you're like they're not interested because.
Not interested. I couldn't
And
find
would your
anyone I
boyfriend
related
go?
with.
Sorry.
I couldn't find anyone I related with.
Yeah.
And because the way I describe it is like the scaffolding was taken away,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would continue to stand without it, and I did not.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
was he
best way.
traveling a lot with his job with doing photography? Was he going off out into the outback or
No,
whatever
not so.
bush
I mean, he was
for?
going out onto the water a lot. He did quite a lot of like photography and stuff out on the reef.
Yeah, yeah.
But I we did leave, so
Hmm.
I basically turned around and I was like, this is not, I can't keep living like this. Like, staying here for a bit was fine.
Hmm.
We were coming up to a year, and I was like,
It's a
we
long
either
time.
move back to
It's a long
Melbourne
time where you don't feel appreciated in the town or wherever you're living. You know, you need to have a
or
sense of community, I
connected.
find. Yeah,
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 you need some. There are some basic core needs, right? Significance, connection,
Yeah.
All human beings need these things, and I was severely lacking them.
And
And also,
especially from when you've gone in the past, like when you went to uni, you said you hit the jackpot with your friends and all that. So you used to go into places, meeting new people, and having a great new circle of friends, and you're suddenly in this little, like, fishing village in Australia, and going, "Oh, nobody seems to like me. What's wrong with me?" You know. And I'm not saying obviously there was, but you're obviously feeling that,
that's
and
exactly
yeah,
how it felt. That is
yeah,
exactly how it felt. And you don't think you think moving from the UK to Australia. I mean, how different can it be? I've been to Australia before. I backpacked through Australia. I mean, how different can it really be, right? Like
you speak the
culturally,
same
how they
language. Yeah,
speak the same language. Most of Australia are
yeah,
expats anyway, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
almost everybody. Obviously, that's not true because uh, it's a massive, massive, massive issue here with First Nations
Of
people
course, of
because
course.
it's their land and we have
Yeah.
absolutely come and colonized it. And, I would never ever claim that Australia belongs to white people. It fucking does not. But,
No.
a lot of the
And
people
then spent like 200 whatever years treating them like third rate citizens
appallingly,
in their
and
own
in some
country.
places
So
still do.
absolutely shocking. Yeah.
Um, so, but, like most white people here came as convicts on a boat. They
Hmm.
can trace their lineage back. So you feel like there shouldn't be that much of a cultural difference. And it was like living in a completely different world.
Hmm.
Living in a completely different world. And I completely lost myself. And to my now ex-boyfriend's credit, it must have been very hard to love me throughout that time.
And he's Australian, did you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he would be fitting in fine with his accent and
Got
all
it.
that, and he's just like, yeah,
He
this
got the
is what I
cultural
do.
references. He understood
Yeah.
AFL,
So he's
all of
probably
that.
just like, what's up with you, kind of thing. Yeah. Why are you not?
Who's
Why
the
are you
girl
not?
I fell in love with in London?
Yeah, because you're probably not feeling like that person anymore, and you're not. You probably become a bit shy, not shy, a bit quieter,
Yeah,
reserved, and not coming out with stuff because you've
second
not got
guessing.
anything going on in
For
your
the
life.
first time
Yeah,
ever, second guessing myself.
yeah. I really feel for you. That sounds like absolute hell. And
It
then
was
what else
horrible.
would you do? Because you and I both inclined to drink when things aren't happening for us. So yeah,
Yeah.
how did that?
So
So you stayed there for a
started
year.
drinking quite a lot then, and
Yeah,
then basically said, "Look, I'm going back to London if we don't leave here. Like, I'm
yeah.
happy to give Australia another go, but it cannot be here." So
You want
we
a
moved
city?
down to
Yeah,
Melbourne, which is where he was originally from, and he still had loads of friends here. And so, again, very lucky, I managed to walk straight into a friendship group that was established, that was welcoming and open and fun. Um, and I kind of sort of slightly came back to life. I still hadn't worked out, I was still waiting tables.
hmm,
So I was still very much feeling behind, like I didn't have a purpose or direction or ambition. All of that was really quite uncomfortable for me. But I was having fun. And because the fun bit was the only bit where I felt like myself and the
hmm,
only bit
hmm.
where I could now get significance because I wasn't getting any of that in my career at all. I was literally waiting tables for 20 bucks an hour and shit tips because I hated my job. So I spent, again, I just focused where I was enjoying my life. So I focused on parties and going out and meeting new people and having a good time and hanging out with my friends. And if there was an excuse to get on it on a Wednesday night, I'd get on it on a Wednesday night. And again,
Yeah,
because I didn't have that framework of 9 to 5, I didn't have any of those parameters that most people probably have. It's a school night, or I work until 5:30 p.m. So I'm, even if I do go to the pub for a couple of drinks, or I do have a glass of wine with dinner, it's at 6 or 7 p.m. I didn't
yeah,
have any of that.
yeah.
So it got better, but probably the drinking didn't.
Hmm.
And again, that was still being monitored by my ex. I was still aware that other people were observing how much I was drinking. My ex would still make these sort of comments every now and then.
Yeah.
And then we broke up, which was absolutely the best thing for both of us. And we're still, I will say this, he's without doubt my best friend in the entire world.
Oh wow,
We are
still.
such good friends. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've worked
Yeah,
really hard on our friendship, and he's an absolute legend.
yeah.
to the point now when we introduce each other to people, I would never introduce him as my ex.
Mm-hmm.
He's just my mate.
He's
We've
just your
just
mate. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's interesting. That's cool.
Which is, it's really nice. We actually had a mutual friend recently who's known us for like 2 years who was like, wait, you guys used to date? And I was like, yeah, like 15 years ago, whatever.
15 years ago.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but at the time it felt,
That you needed to
it was,
do that.
it was a
Yeah.
big
Because if he
deal.
was judging you, and yeah, I guess you needed to go on and do other things. And yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes we're in relationships for the wrong reasons. A lot of my early relationships, we ended up just becoming like almost like housemates, you know?
Yeah, it was, I mean, by that time it was plutonic,
Yeah, yeah.
like
So,
it really was time. And
yeah.
then I lived by myself. Well, I lived with friends.
Hmm.
Um, and I started working for myself. I kind of hit this wall. Actually, it was a really great friend of mine. I was moaning and moaning and moaning about my lack of direction and my shit job. And she turned around and she said, look, you, you have a choice. You can do something about it or you can shut up about it. Those are your two options. You can't keep bitching about something that you're not changing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like someone had slapped me around the face, but it was the best thing I could have heard. And another friend of mine had said, oh, have you thought about life coaching? And
Hmm.
this was over a decade ago, so it would have been 12 years ago. So it was still, personal development was still this really new thing. People, it
Yeah.
wasn't in the mainstream like it is now. And certainly online, this was before Instagram. So people
Yeah,
weren't
this would have
making
been like
courses.
courses like that you'd find on teletext or something like that, and
Yeah,
not
yeah,
not
yeah,
like on
yeah,
Instagram,
teletext.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So my initial response was that sounds American and shit. And then I remembered my friend who was like, you cannot, like, you've got to be open-minded to
Yeah, yeah.
change. So I went along to a free weekend and it was the first time that anyone had really talked about setting an intention, thinking about where you want to go, like what do you want to do, who do you want to be, what changes do you have to make? You are responsible for the results that you have in your life. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm responsible for the results I have in my life. Sit down. It was honestly, I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say it now, but it was honestly the first time that anyone had. I grew up in a second. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh,
Hang on, this
shit.
is down to me. Yeah,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
can direct this. Actually, life is not what happens. Of course, life is what happens to you. Of course, it is. Stuff
yeah,
happens, right? And we cannot control the vast majority of what happens. And in amongst that sea of a complete lack of control, we can direct our ship
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that for me was so novel. I was just like, holy shit. And up until that point, I had just done whatever was offered to me. And I
Hmm.
had done the thing that was the easiest and the funnest. And I had avoided failure at all costs. And which is why I just said yes. Whenever I got headhunted, I was like, yes, I'll do that.
Hmm.
That's the next progression.
Yeah.
Um,
But
without
also,
thinking,
you're
is
being
this
you're
what I want?
being felt like you're being wanted. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh,
Yes.
this person wants me. It's an ego thing as well, I'm sure. And
Mm.
it's like, obviously there's more money and it's more job opportunity. But of course, someone says, we want you because you're perfect for this position. You're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
yes, I'm going to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, of course. Why
Sounds good
not?
to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so then I started working for myself.
Hmm.
I did sort of 2 years of study, and started working for myself. And I was living with friends at the time, and again, really sort of cemented myself as the girl who was always up for a good time, always up for a glass of wine, or always said yes. I was sort of studying and still working as a waitress, so I didn't
Hmm.
really have a lot of the responsibilities that other people in my life had. So if anyone was looking for someone to go and cause some trouble with, I was in. I was just
Yeah,
always
yeah,
in.
yeah.
And then I started working. I began to earn enough money not to have to waitress anymore.
Hmm.
And so now I'm just working from home, working from home, working from home. And so I'd like go and meet a friend for work or whatever. She'd like have a lunch break and I'd be like, should we have a glass of wine? Because again, I don't have parameter. I've never learnt parameter. And so we'd have a glass of wine with lunch. And then on the way home, I would just obviously go past the bottle-o. So here in Australia, you can't sell alcohol like in normal supermarkets or shops. So we
Oh,
have
right.
designated shops for alcohol buying, and we call them bottle-os.
Bottle.
So it's bottle-o, the bottle
Bottle eye.
shop.
Yeah.
Bottle-o, mate. And so
And
I'd go past the bottle-o and I'd pick up a bottle of wine, and it was always two for $20, right? So you buy two for $20 because that is efficient and it's cheap and it's a deal. And then I'd get home and I'd be like, well, I've already had a glass of wine, so I'm going to sit in front of my laptop and, do my marketing stuff and do on my laptop. So I'll just casually have a glass of wine while I'm doing that. So I was never drunk,
you're
but by
sophisticated, Emily. You're sat there with a laptop. You're a woman of the noughties and the teens. You got a glass of wine, and you're a power woman. This is what you're doing,
I
and you've got your wine, so no one's taking that away from you.
am the
That's the
shit.
attitude. Yeah,
Yeah. And then by sort of 7 p.m., have had half that bottle.
yeah,
And then obviously I go out for dinner.
yeah.
And then I have a bottle of wine with my friends. And then the problem is, and then I come home and there's that other bottle of wine that I hadn't opened yet. And so I drink
Yeah.
that before I go to bed. And at no point have I been fucking wasted. But
No.
somehow between lunchtime and bedtime, I've had 3.5 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
And
And is
and
that a
it just went
daily
on.
occurrence?
And then that became daily.
Yeah.
And then I began to worry that my housemates, who were such good friends of mine to this day,
Hmm. Hmm.
great, great, great friends of mine, they were a couple, and I would be like, oh shit, they're going to notice how many bottles of wine. So I would take the wine bottles out to the recycling so that they couldn't see them.
Yeah.
And that's when I began to observe my behavior. And I was like, that's problematic behavior. And I would justify that problematic behavior because I don't have a problem with alcohol. I just like a glass of wine at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And
And then
then
some.
and then some. And then a couple of things happened, like, three things happened in very sort of quick succession. In 2017, which was when things really started ramping up.
Hmm.
My mum, who had been diagnosed with cancer a few years beforehand, died in 2017. And I was in and out of England quite a lot, and my business wasn't established. I didn't have systems in place. Nothing was scalable. It was, really in its infancy. And so obviously that took a bit of a downturn. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, I feel really broke again. I just started earning some decent money. And so business was kind of feeling really, really hard. My mum had just died. And then I'd been seeing someone that year.
Hmm.
And then they ended our relationship maybe 2 months after mum died. And then,
Jeez.
like, literally the week after that, found out that they were in a new relationship with one of my best friends. And it all happened so suddenly, and it was all so crunchy. And
Yeah.
I was so annoyed with the universe because I really felt like I had done the thing that was asked of me. I'd
Yeah.
grown up, I'd taken a really big risk, and I'd backed myself, and I'd invested in this course, and I'd put so much work in, and I'd done all the things that the personal development people had told me to do, and actually shit was still raining down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a massive, like, it was a massive realization to me that you can do all the things that you're meant to do, but unless you have spiritual and emotional resilience, life is going to life on you. People are still going to die. You can't stop people from getting sick and dying. You can't stop people from breaking your heart. You can't
No.
stop betrayal. You can't stop economic downturn. All the things that we like to think that we have some semblance of control over, we just don't. And I
Hmm.
still, at the age of, how old was I now? 33, 34, still hadn't built the emotional tools to be able to handle that.
Hmm.
So what do? I really just start fucking like drinking in the morning, drinking out of coffee cups so my, flatmates don't notice. And then I knew now that I had a problem. I knew that
Yeah.
this was not social drinking. And at the beginning, no, it was my birthday actually of 2018.
Hmm.
I went on holiday with some friends. We went to Sri Lanka, and the mental headspace that drinking took up when I wasn't actually drinking, I was like, oh my God, I'm with people the whole time. These were people I knew from my hospo days, right? So these were
Hmm.
big ass drinkers back in the day. And like I was just consumed with, when are we going to have our next drink? Who's going to suggest that we have our next drink? How can I get someone else to suggest that we order a bottle of wine that's not me? Okay, we're getting on a
Hmm.
train. Who can I, like, how can I get Rosie to want to buy beer before we get on the train so we can drink on the train? Because I don't want to be the person that suggests that we drink on the train. And it was absolutely exhausting.
Yeah, all consuming.
Absolutely so exhausting, to the point that I didn't even enjoy the drink when I was drinking it. It was and that's when I was like, oh my God, I cannot have a nice time. I can't be present to my, I'm in Sri Lanka
Yeah.
and I can't be present to any of it, because the only thing, it was obsession. The only thing I could think about was, when was I going to get my next drink? And then from Sri Lanka, I went to the UK. It
Yeah.
was the first time I'd been back in the UK since mum had died. And exactly the same thing. I was like with my sisters, and I was like, how can I get them to order wine? How can I get them to have a glass of wine? I remember being at my dad's house, my dad and I sitting and watching a movie, and I would get up and I would run to his spirit cabinet like I was 14 and like neck a shot, and then come back in and pretend I'd been to the toilet.
And it's like all these things that you're saying, like on the train, on the plane, or getting your friends or your sisters to, you're trying to kind of mind meld with them to, right, you go and get the beers without saying it. How often did that actually work, and how often was it that you actually were the one that was instigating the drinking? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, but I would just get sick of waiting for people to do that, and I would just go, well, I'm going to get the beers for this, and I'm going to, and then I got to a point where I was like, I don't care what they think of me anymore, because I need this, you know.
I did care what they thought, and
Yeah.
so I doubled down.
Yeah.
I would be like, yeah, we're having beers. Come on, we're on holiday. This isn't what we would normally do, but we're on holiday, so it's okay that we're having beers on the train. Or, it's the first time I've been here since Mum's died. Of course, we're going to have a glass of wine in her honor.
Yeah. Yeah. Extreme.
Like, who even are you? What even is
Yeah.
this? And so
Yeah.
when I left the UK, came back after that trip, on the plane on the way home, I was like, the moment this plane lands in Melbourne, that's it. Gonna stop drinking.
Hmm.
And then came the bargaining. Then came okay, well, I will have to drink this weekend though, right? Because it's Sophie's birthday. Or actually, on Tuesday night, I said I'd go to that social event, and I can't possibly go to a social event and be sober, because how do you socialize? How can I be fun? How can I be the person that people have grown to expect me to be,
Hmm.
unless I've had
Hmm.
half a bottle of wine before I rock up? The bullshit bargaining of, oh, if someone else orders me the drink, then I can drink it. I'll go and I'll only have one. I'll only drink when I'm out. I won't drink at home anymore. And again, it's the energy of bargaining with myself and constantly letting myself down and disappointing myself was just so intense. And then on the side of that, I'm building my business back up,
Hmm.
teaching women personal development, which is so anti my behavior. And I began just to feel like this awful hypocrite.
Yeah.
I it just I I just knew something had to change, and I had a friend who had just come out of rehab, and I said to her, like, I really have to give up drinking. Like it has to happen.
Hmm.
And she said, why don't you come to a meeting? And I said, well, because I'm not an alcoholic. And she said, what do you think an alcoholic is? And I said, well, obviously an alcoholic is somebody who has drunk themselves to the point that they no longer have a job, they no longer have friends, they're a social outcast, maybe they don't have a house anymore. And then there was just this silence, and she looked at me and she said, or an alcoholic is somebody who wants to not drink and can't.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh shit. Well, then in that case, that's me. Anyway, I still didn't feel comfortable with that sort of terminology, but I did go to a meeting.
Yeah.
And she picked me up, and because I wasn't driving, right? I didn't have a car, because why on earth would you have a car? If you have a car, you can't drink.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
never went anywhere
yeah,
and didn't drink.
yeah.
So why would I bother having a car?
I didn't have a
So,
car. I did lose my license when I was 21, but I got it back, and then once I got it back, I don't think I drove until I was like 38,
Yeah.
because why would I want a car? I lived in
Why would I
London
want a
for a
car?
lot of those years, but it was like, yeah, when I moved out of London to other cities and that, I was like, why would I want a car? I
Yeah.
can't drink
Terrible
and
idea.
drive, so yeah,
What waste
yeah,
of money.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, waste of money.
Yeah. Crazy. And so your life becomes that little bit smaller. Anyway,
Hmm.
the crazy things that we do. Um, so she picked me up to go to this meeting, and she
This was
said on the
AA,
way,
was it? Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
she said on the way there, she said, just do one thing for me. One thing. She said, I want you to listen for the similarities, because if you go there looking for the differences, you will see them. Listen for the similarities.
Yeah.
And so the guy that shared at this meeting, it's a huge meeting, it was like 100 and something people in the room. Massive meeting. And the guy, the format of this particular meeting was that they had someone with a few years up their sleeve, and that they would share for 20 minutes and then opened to the floor.
Hmm.
And so this guy shared, and lo and behold, it was, I guess, more like the sort of, I don't know, classic alcoholic story that you hear: abusive childhood, and, never felt loved, never felt cared for, had his first sip of alcohol at like 9 and immediately felt better. And then,
All the
on and on
differences.
stories go, all the differences. This is not
Not
my
you.
experience.
No.
But what I heard when I listened for the similarities was that, like, that pull, that like relentlessness, that like feeling of like being dependent on something you don't want to be dependent on, that manipulation,
Hmm.
that feeling like you're not yourself but you don't know who to be without it, the fear of who you might be without it. And I was just like, oh my good God, I'm not the only person that feels like this.
Yeah.
And I just met some amazing people in that room and heard some really amazing stories. And the normalization,
Hmm.
it was interesting. It was an interesting year, actually, that first year when I was in the rooms a lot.
Hmm.
Like, my judgment took a real, like, I really had, it changed the way I look at people
Hmm.
and the judgments that I put on people.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
what you realize is that alcoholism does not care how much money you earn, where you come from, the color of your skin,
Hmm.
what your circumstances are a lot of the time.
Hmm.
Um, like, you be sitting next to somebody who lost absolutely everything and was sort of living in a shelter, and then on the other side you've got this CEO of a company in an Armani suit, and the
Yeah.
story is the same. It's a
Yeah.
different context,
Yeah.
but it's the same. And you travel around the world and you go to meetings in different countries in different languages, and it's the same.
Hmm.
And
And these are people that you wouldn't normally gravitate towards, because you're like, well, why would I be friends with such and such a person or whatever? But
yeah.
in the rooms, that all doesn't matter, and you're just at one with these people. They're your tribe,
Mm,
and it's bizarre. I mean, I was the same as you. I went religiously, not religiously, militantly for the first year,
yeah,
and
same.
just it opened up my awareness of people, and also not just, as you say, it doesn't discriminate, but like, never judge someone because you don't know what they're going through. You know,
Yeah,
if you see someone
yeah.
that's being really shitty in a shop and they're taking it out on someone, it's like, well, hang on, they might just be a dick, but also they might be going through some serious shit in their life,
Mm,
so let's
yeah,
not judge them just for
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
definitely made me a nicer person, I would say, a more tolerant person.
More tolerant,
So I
more
think,
patient. Yeah.
mm, absolutely. So, yeah, that was it really. I think, there was a sort of, yeah, there was a piece of that story I kind of missed out, which is the last night that I ever drank. I'd
Yes.
been in, so it was the 29th of May, and I had been in like a business development workshop with a mentor of mine at the time, and she'd asked us to, we were going to go into this meditation around like what it is that we wanted, who we wanted to be, how we wanted to grow our business, the type of leader that we wanted to be in our business. And then she said, before we go into this meditation, I just want you to think of one thing that you need to give up today, whether that, she didn't talk about alcohol, but she was like, maybe it's a habit or a thought or a behavior or a person, what is holding you back that could move
Mm-hmm.
you forward if you were willing to let it go. And I remember thinking to myself, oh God, please don't be alcohol, please don't be alcohol, please don't be alcohol. And I was like, oh, of course it's alcohol. And so that was I think that was that was the moment where I realized that for the first time I had ambition, and I
Yeah.
was at a crossroads. Was I going to let that ambition go for alcohol, or was I going to let alcohol go for the ambition?
Yeah.
And having had 5 or 6 years of just like really like on my knees in terms of career and feeling left behind, and I was earning no money. I was broke.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
in my mid 30s, when all my friends were like buying their first house and going on nice holidays to Europe, and I was like scraping money together at the end of every
To buy
month to pay my
alcohol. Yeah.
alcohol, that's a
Yeah.
necessity.
Yeah, that's not, yeah, this is not the luxuries of life. This is like, I
No,
need that. So that side of my money is being kept aside for
grocery
that.
shopping.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
exactly.
was part of my grocery bill.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
it
yeah,
was like
yeah.
my milk. So so I think that was like a real, and obviously on the back of this holiday, and I was trying to give up anyway. So that was like a real moment where I was like, okay. And so that night, I was like,
Hmm.
oh, this might be the last time I drink alcohol. I'm gonna go for it. I got so drunk. I don't
Yeah.
know where I went. I don't know who I spoke to. I have no recollection of that
Wow.
evening at all. I didn't even enjoy it because I can't remember it.
So
So
it
I,
wasn't even drinking at home. You just went out on the town and just went
I
for it.
went
And
out.
everything, yeah, you went out, out,
Yeah,
out, out.
I went out,
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
And then the next day I woke up, and yeah, when you're so hungover, your hair hurts. Like it.
I
Oh,
mean,
it
everything
was
hurt on me. So yeah,
bad. It was
yeah,
bad. So yeah, so that was on the it was on a Tuesday night
yeah,
randomly.
yeah.
Um,
Well, no
and so
boundaries.
that was yeah, no boundaries. And then the Sunday was the first day that I walked into a recovery room.
Yeah. And how long ago is
4
that
days
now,
sober.
Emily?
So that was 2018, May 2018.
Yeah. So seven and a half years now. Wow, amazing. Well done, you. Well done, you.
Yeah,
And
thank
how
you.
has your life transformed since then, or has it just been a bit shit since giving up alcohol?
No, definitely hasn't been shit.
Hmm.
Definitely. So one of the so I think that there were two things that happened. The first was I 7 years ago doesn't sound like a particularly long time ago, but it was pre-pandemic,
Yes.
pre-pandemic,
Different
and
era.
everyone was still drinking. All of my friends were still partying. None of my friends here in Australia had started having babies yet, so
Hmm.
all of my friends were still partying. And I left that meeting, that AA meeting, and so many people are so embarrassed to say that they're an alcoholic in public.
Yeah.
I knew that the only way that I was going to stay sober is if I impressed upon other people the severity of the situation, because I was always
Hmm.
a fun drunk. I was always
Hmm.
great to be around. Like
Hmm.
no one was going to be like, "Oh, Em, thank God you've given up alcohol. We're about to stage an intervention." That was not what was going on. I was fun, Emily. I was generous. I was kind. I didn't turn into a dick. It was a good time drinking with me. And
Yeah, yeah.
because people weren't at home with me, because people can't see the
The after hours.
arguing
Yeah.
with the devil that you're having in your head. They don't know how you're feeling under your skin. Nobody knew that it was a problem.
Hmm.
So when I told people, everyone was like, "Shut up! What are you talking about? Shut up! Shut up! Have a glass of wine." And so I used AA and the identity of alcoholic as a way to communicate to people, back the fuck off.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
really important, and I cannot retract this now. I
yeah.
knew if I walked back into my life after that first meeting and went, "Oh, I'm just going to not drink to this weekend," I'd be pissed by 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So I walked into my friendship circle and I was like, "Guys, I've got a problem. I've been to AA, and from here on in, calling myself an alcoholic, you cannot offer me a drink from here on in." And a lot of people push back on it, because what happens when you bring your shit to somebody else, it
Hmm.
reflects their shit back to them.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
So if your friend has maybe got a little problem with alcohol, that's not too
Hmm.
bad. but probably they know they're drinking a little bit
But again,
much.
you don't see what's going on behind closed doors or under their
No,
skin when they go home. So when everyone
no,
goes their separate ways, if you're handling it and not showing it as well, they could be doing exactly the same thing. So
somebody
it
else
does.
is
It puts
doing
that
that.
mirror up in front of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so there were people that did not like it.
Hmm.
And of course, it changed. Now I had to redefine what fun was,
Yeah.
and I had to work out how to stay in connection with the people that I loved in a very new way.
Hmm.
Um, and I had to do that with my friends here in Australia, and then I also had to do that with my family back in the UK.
Hmm.
And it was really hard, and I, definitely had FOMO, and I knew that the only way I knew enough about human behavior to know that everything is a scale, everything is a tipping point,
Yeah.
everything. And if giving up alcohol meant that my understanding of fun, the good things, the things that I considered good in my life,
Hmm.
connection,
Hmm.
significance, fun, were the scale was suddenly going to tip. I was going to be without those things. And so the only way that I could address the balance of that scale was to start intentionally piling on weight to not drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
every single thing that happened in my life that I considered to be good, I would tell myself that's a direct result of you not drinking alcohol. Wake up in the morning without feeling like a badger had shat in my mouth. That's a direct feeling. That's a direct result of not drinking alcohol.
Hmm.
More
Hmm.
money in my bank account than I had last week. That's because I'm not drinking alcohol. Got a sale in business. That's because I'm not drinking alcohol. Bought my first car in Melbourne. That's because I'm not drinking alcohol. Every single piece of success, anything that I deemed to be good,
Hmm.
anything that I deemed to be um,
A win.
like a win in my life, I would consciously and intentionally out loud in the written down. I had a notebook that just said, I da 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 da
Yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
drinking alcohol. I bu- 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 because I'm not drinking alcohol. Like an actual mad woman. Like if someone found that journal, they'd be like, "This woman is in trouble." But like it was the only way I knew to continue to balance out
I think it's
what
genius
I
what
was
you did.
losing.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely genius.
Yeah. And do you know what? I still
It's
do it
almost like
today.
reverse, not reverse manifestation, but you're doing it after you've manifested
Yes.
it, kind of thing. You're writing it down after it's happened to
Yes.
reinforce it. So yeah, I love that. I love that.
And to this day, I still do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good, good.
Like, I have a very abundant, very connected, very fun, joyful life. It's not without its problem
No,
because that's
but
not the
what
way that
life?
life
Well, this
works.
is what makes life interesting. If everything was just plain sailing and we didn't have to try, then it would be absolutely fucking boring. So
Wouldn't it
yeah.
just?
Do
You wouldn't
you
appreciate the good bits.
do you regret getting sober, Emily?
No, God, no, 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 not for a second. Not, there is not one piece of my life that is worse off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Every single element of my life, my relationships, my friendships, my relationship with my sis, both of my sisters have stopped
Hmm.
drinking in the wake of me not drinking.
Right, right,
Um,
okay.
I know, yeah, which is just so delightful. It didn't happen instantly,
Hmm.
but both of them separately and together have said if I hadn't gone first, they wouldn't have followed. There's no way I would have the business I have, the friends I have, the level of fitness that I have. Um, yeah, this gorgeous, lovely flat, my gorgeous, lovely dog. I would, it would be so problematic. In the rooms they talk a lot, don't they, about the gift of desperation, how
Hmm.
a lot of people won't find themselves in a room unless they've really hit rock bottom and there is nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And my first sponsor used to say to me, Emily, you were blessed with the gift of inspiration. It's like you
Ah,
saw what was going to happen if this behavior continued and you
yeah.
intervened before it got that bad. And I consider myself to be, really fucking lucky
Yeah.
that for whatever reason that gift of inspiration was bestowed upon me, and I didn't have to wait until the gift of desperation, because I have seen the gift of
Oh,
desperation, and believe me, it's not a gift.
well, I was, I mean, I think that's a great way of putting it. How you, and obviously that you could see, almost played the tape forward like they do in smart meetings to combat it before it got that bad. When it does get that bad, like where I was, when I was drinking first thing in the morning and I needed it because I needed a medical detox from the withdrawal, it's all, and I'm not saying it's just so hard to get out of that as well. Now I know it was hard for you to get out where you were, but it's like at this point you're just like, well, what's the point? You know,
Yeah.
this is who I
That is
am
a
now. So
different level of addiction.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
100%. I'm very aware. I think that's where I would be
But
if I
you would
had
have been
continued
there. You would have been
at
there,
that
and you saw it,
individual.
and you had the
Yeah,
foresight to kind of go, "No, I don't want to get
yeah,
there," which is
yeah.
so commendable and so, yeah,
Mhm.
just so amazing. So well done, you. What
Thank you.
advice would you give to someone that was kind of, early stages, early days, or kind of just a bit sober curious? What would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, I think radical honesty
Mm-hmm.
is so hard. Radical honesty is so hard because, our own bullshit is in our own voice. So it's really
Yeah.
easy to believe our own bullshit. But have a radically honest conversation with yourself. When are you drinking? Why are you drinking? And what is the consequence of your drinking? And if
Yeah.
you can answer all three of those things with really positive, enriching answers, probably you don't have a problem. But if
Yeah.
one of those things comes from a place of fear, or it comes from a place of emotional management, or it comes from a place, or it results in life being a little less good, even if
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's, oh, I couldn't get out of bed on Sunday because of my dirty hangover, and actually what a waste of a day, then consider what it would look like not to drink alcohol. And I was so scared that I wouldn't have any friends left.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found is that without doubt, I have quite a large friendship group, and
Mm-hmm.
without doubt, there were some friends who were just like, "Oh well, all right, well, I won't see you then if I don't see you at the pub," and it hurt a little bit. Some of them I was a bit like, "Actually, I don't miss you at all.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
without alcohol, what did we have in terms of friendship?" And some of those relationships I was actually quite glad to see the back of, but the ones that matter, the
Mm-hmm.
ones that stuck around, I am so much closer to those people. We are
Mm.
so much more connected. We have such different levels of conversation now. And part of that is because I know myself. I trust myself. I like myself. Giving up alcohol is it's a personal development journey, and there will be layers to it, and some of those layers are a bit ugly, and there are some truths that you might not want to look dead in the face, but if you can find the strength and the community of people to help you work through those things, you will find a part of yourself that is so, you just feel proud to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that that's it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, and I see it in other people. I see them go through that process, um and everybody is different, everybody's story is different, of course, but I think there are enough sober people in the world with such wonderful enriched lives and friendships that it's definitely worth giving it a shot. Find a
Oh,
community of people, don't do it alone.
don't do it alone.
Don't
Like,
you are going to have to change something about your life. What
yeah.
you can't do is just take alcohol out,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're just living your life without alcohol in it. And if alcohol has become the thing that you consider to be your reference point for fun, for connection, for some people, connection with their romantic partner as well,
Mm-hmm.
for bravery, for courage, if alcohol is the thing in your mind that anchors all of those things, and then you just try and live without it, that's going to be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So you will need to enrich your life in other ways. You will need to, give different areas of your life a little bit of a makeover, a little
Yeah.
bit of a glow up, and try other things to forge
Oh,
connection, to find courage and bravery, to redefine what fun is.
yeah.
I went to see Oasis are in Australia
Yeah.
at the moment. I went to see Oasis on Saturday, and it's amazing that I know every single lyric to all of their songs still, considering that I was pretty much drunk for the whole
Where
of
does that, how does that get in
the.
there? Yeah. But it's
It's
true
so
what you
funny, isn't it?
say. It's true what you say about the connection, because the conversations and chats that I have with people when I'm out now, when I'm talking to someone else that's not, drinking or whatever, or not kind of inebriated, it's deep and meaningful conversations, because the conversations we had when we were out with our friends on the town, it's just all bullshit. It was all just nonsense. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't any
Trauma
deep
dumping
and
at 2 a.m. in the blooming club toilets. Like,
yeah,
that's not connection.
it's not connection. It's
It's
just
not.
kind of ambling through life in a kind of haphazard, hazy way, and it's not,
Yeah.
it's not, it's not fun. It's not fun
Yeah, yeah,
anymore.
yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was that. Yeah, you find different ways to experience fun. And do you know what? I went to Oasis with some friends.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Almost all of my friends still drink, right?
yeah.
And so I went. Actually, it was with the guys I used to live with when I was in my heavy drinking stage. And they were drinking, all good because we were just at Oasis, fine. I didn't find it. Sometimes when I'm around drunk people, I can be really bored. Anyway, we got home and it was really late. Got home, I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I went to the gym. I went walked my dog on the beach. I went and had lunch with another friend. Got some work done. Like did some meal prep, tidied the house, checked in with my mates who'd gone to Oasis with me, and they'd spent like the whole day just like lying in bed, completely
Yeah,
hungover, and I was just like, we had the same experience at Oasis.
yeah. No, you had a better
We,
one.
in fact, I probably had a better one because I remember
You remembered everything.
singing
Yeah,
Wonderwall,
yeah, yeah,
and that you just wiped out Sunday. And so I think part of this is like how you choose to view it.
yeah.
It's the perspective you choose to put on something. And you
Hmm.
have to really ask yourself, like, what do I really value and how can I get those values met without alcohol? And actually, can I get those values met to a higher level without
Hmm.
alcohol? And probably the answer is yes. It's not going to happen overnight. That first year of sobriety, I've made it sound really easy. That first year of sobriety for me was hard. It was
Yeah,
hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and pretend like immediately everything was better because it wasn't. It's an adjustment. It's like there's like an identity part of you that needs to
hmm,
die so that a new part of you can be reborn, which is why community is such a powerful thing, to be around other people who are in that process or who've gone through that process or wanting to go through that process with you. It's very, very powerful to be around community. But 7 years in, I just
yeah.
unfathomable to me now that I would pick up a drink.
No, I
Craziness.
know. And that's it. I mean, I was speaking to someone yesterday, day before, it was like 2.5 years. And he had to have a liver transplant, kidney transplant. But he's 2.5 years and he said he still has thoughts. And I'm like, that'll go, man. That'll go. Don't
It
worry
will.
about
It
it.
does.
That is going to go. But at this point, you are still in those kind of early days. I know you and I are still early days, but it does go. And I'm like, I'm so happy that I can tell him that now. I know
Mm.
everyone's different, but like the longer you stick at this, it does go. Because like, Jen the other day, my wife the other day, we were in Tesco's and she said, "Oh, it was really busy," and she kind of said, "Well, I've got a little tip. We can go down the booze aisle because no one's ever really in here, so you can just walk through to get to the other side, go to the checkout." And I was like, "Oh, right." And it was like, because I don't go down the booze aisle because they don't sell rice down there, so I
Yeah,
hardly ever
yeah.
go down it. But it was just interesting that I can walk through and not even. I think in fact we even stopped, and I stopped to have a look at the vodka and see how much it was. Oh my
Mm.
God, it's so much more expensive than when
Isn't it?
I was drinking, so I probably couldn't even sustain it now. So it's crazy. Uh,
No. Well, you would have found the money, wouldn't you?
I
That's the
would have
crazy.
found the money. Yeah, yeah, without a doubt.
And
We
so your
always did.
life would have been worse off in other ways as a result of it, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have
Like,
been eating. I probably wouldn't have put fuel in my car, or my rent might have been late. All of these
yeah,
different things that would have
yeah.
had to be
And
pushed
then
out
all
of the
of these
way.
problems that don't feel like your problem, they feel like feels like the world is doing it to you,
Yeah,
and actually
yeah.
you are responsible for all of that.
Of course you are. Yeah. And lastly, Emily, what have you got any recommendations for a podcast, a book, or a film with regards to recovery? One or all
Ooh.
three?
I mean, look, he's obviously quite problematic for lots of reasons, but Russell Brand's Recovery is a
Yeah.
really what's the like, a layman's term book
It's
for the
like
12
it's
steps.
Yeah. I mean, I read that when I was in rehab, actually. Someone gifted it to me before he was kind of quite problematic. But
Yeah.
it is a great book. I always did find him a bit weird, but I did find
Yeah.
him funny and quite charismatic. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you're kind of doing it differently, so I get that.
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like, there is something about him, maybe.
But if you
But
can
yeah.
park him
Oh,
away
it's
from
a
the
book.
book,
Yeah,
the book itself is it's a great way, because the big book is, it's a lot
there's a lot.
sometimes,
Yeah. And it's old
because
fashioned, the writing and all of that. It's not
yes,
written for like 21st century, is it? I mean, I think
not
it's
at
coming up
all.
for 100 years old. Is it 39 or
Yeah.
38?
Um,
So,
and so, yeah, the recovery was great for that. And then I think like more and more people are living sober lives.
mm, hmm
One of those people, and really early on, I got onto this, was Brené Brown. She never considered herself to be an alcoholic, but she comes from a family of alcoholics, and so she walked into an AA room when she was at university because she was like, "I don't want to become an alcoholic,"
mm,
and she's lived a sober life ever since. And I think it's really nice to be able to recognize where people are doing life sober
hmm
and they have a high level of sort of success.
yeah,
So yeah, I think, but honestly, for me, and again, everybody is different. I'm without doubt a people person.
yeah,
I would not have been able to get through probably the first 2 years
hmm
without a community of people who are also doing the work. So above, I mean, there are some great podcasts. There's a charity actually here in Australia, but I think they're global, called Sunday Morning. Have you heard
Oh,
of
right,
it?
okay. It rings a bell, I think.
And the idea is about, waking up fresh on a Sunday morning and not waking up with a
Yeah.
hangover. So they have a podcast and like an online community. So wherever you need to find your online community, find your online community,
Yeah.
or a community of sorts, because it's being human
Mm.
can be a very lonely experience, and change is really hard.
Yeah.
And finding people who will actively encourage you and love you through that change, who aren't your normal people, because your normal people struggle with change as well, and your normal people don't really want you to change, and you changing changes their lives, and so there's tension there, there's friction there. Finding a group of people who really, honestly, you probably wouldn't have known before
hmm
sobriety is a really great way to sort of, I don't know, try out your new identity, and to
hmm
observe how other people are doing it. I wouldn't have got through it without the community, for sure.
No, no, I totally agree with you. And it's as humans, we do tend to follow the path of least resistance. So it is easy to just get stuck in our old ways. But you know what? Like, trying, because I'd moved back to the Isle of Man and got sober here in 2020, and it was during lockdown. So there was so many different aspects that I had to force myself to get out and meet people and go to the meetings and all of that. And eventually it led to meeting my beautiful wife, which was just that would have been unheard of like 5 years ago, especially in the early days of recovery, because I was only socializing with people that were in recovery because I couldn't go near a pub or any of that stuff. Now it's fine. I choose not to go in them because, like, why would I, unless there's a specific reason to go to a pub. I'm like, yeah, I'd rather go to a coffee shop.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah. Emily, it's been absolutely fab having a chat with you and getting to know you
That's been
and
so
listening to your story. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the time. I really appreciate it. It's been so nice to connect, like
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
of sort of socials or, yeah, tech channels. It's been really, really lovely. Thank
No,
you so much.
absolutely. I've really enjoyed it. It's been an absolute thrill to just finally meet you and chat to you. So
Mm.
thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank
Saturday
you.
night.
Enjoy your lovely Saturday.
Cheers, Emily. Bye bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.